Okay, right. It's 12 o'clock, everybody, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. For those of you on the watching the webinar replay, welcome. This is all about AI for account managers. The purpose really is to give you an overview of the general landscape of AI. And I'm going to pass over shortly to Roy Murphy, who's our resident emerging tech expert, to cover that for about 20 minutes. Then we're going to give you some tools for 20 minutes that are going to be relevant to your agency account management role. And then what we'd like you to do is to ask questions in the chat box, and Alison is here to monitor the questions. So we're going to leave enough time at the end to answer your questions. And at the end of this webinar, you will receive the recording. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to the lovely Roy Murphy to do a short intro and to talk us through the agenda. Thanks, Roy.
Thanks, Jenny. Very short intro. I'll make it super quick. Hello, everyone. Just thinking that, there's so many account managers on this call. No one's doing any work, are they? Agency land is literally bereft currently. This is fantastic. Good to see. Good to see so many people, though. It's an exciting space. Obviously, lots going on. Loads to get through the next 15, 20 minutes, and then some brilliant tools from Jenny as well to give you some real context. So yeah, Roy Murphy, that's me. Please don't be disappointed when you meet me in real life. My AI is much more handsome, disappointingly, particularly as I'm not drinking this year and hasn't made my skin or my hair grow any better. Disappointing. So I'm a founder of Generate. We are a new AI and Web3 creative consultancy. So right in the middle of this space. Fascinating stuff happening. We're working with our clients on AI strategy, generative sprints, private LLM development, and all sorts of interesting stuff. Happy to chat at any point. Roy@generate.com. So that's me. Coming up the next sort of 15, 20 minutes, a bit about the generative landscape, a bit about prompting, some examples ahead of Jenny's brilliant tools, and then we'll cover a bit of productivity and legal as well, because the landscape's moving so quickly. And the legal landscape as well, and the IP landscape moves so quickly that it's good to be on top of that as business professionals, as account managers, and to help our clients to kind of, use this exponential tech in the right and the most appropriate way. So the landscape, wow, this is always a tricky one. It's such a big and fast moving area that I've attempted to narrow it down to these three images. Now, it isn't actually a boy band from the 90s gone wrong, which someone said we were yesterday. Actually, this is it. So lots of things happening. Like, ChatGPT launched last year, 30th of November. Obviously, it's been happening before that, but it really exploded. And we've kind of seen over the last sort of 8 months what mass adoption looks like when it meets exponential technology. So on the left-hand side, I think maybe if you remember it, we have a handsome-looking fella in Balenciaga, i.e. the Pope. I think what happened in around March was people started to realize that these tools were becoming really kind of good in terms of production. And that was one of those images that went viral, and went, oh, wow, this is interesting, right? Well, there's tools like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, Clip, and so on. So that kind of happened as one of those kind of big kind of touch points. In the middle, we've got Geoffrey Hinton, the so-called godfather of AI, on the sort of doomsayer side. And he came out in about a month and a half ago and said, I'm out, I've had enough, I'm going to the beach. This is far too much. You don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you've unleashed, and I'm out. I don't want any part of it. On the other side of the coin, and then our lovely image on the right is just what's happening this week. So some really interesting moves. That is Llama 2, which is Facebook, who have launched their own or their second version of their LLM, which is a direct competition to OpenAI and GPT. And that is a fascinating space. And over the next 6 months, we're going to see more and more of these things happening. You probably have heard of loads of things around GPT and OpenAI and the voice share that they've got, and your clients are probably talking about, but it isn't just about them. So keep that in mind as we go through. It really isn't just that. And over the next couple of quarters, it really will become apparent that that isn't the case. And lots more of these large language models are in play from the big tech players and some others too. So keep in mind. Last thing on this one is, disappointingly, Hollywood's gone on strike. So I can't watch any Netflix at the moment. That's no good, and new films. Part of the reason for them going on strike, which is really fascinating and interesting for the future, is the fact that the AI rights and the IP is part of that conversation. So keep in mind that often where Hollywood and other sectors like work first, other sectors follow. So that's an interesting one to keep on top of. And don't go see any films because it's going to be hard to come across over the next few months. So don't worry too much about what you see in the press. The press is there to, ultimately sell papers and clicks and print. we've been here before. Now you've got a balance of, you know, on the optimist side and the doomsayers and so on, but ultimately we've been here before technology, right? In 1860 there was a warning about AI and machine learning. About 50 years ago there was typewriter licenses when typewriters come out because they were so scared that the written word was going to go away. We've been here before, admittedly not at the level of AI, but again, you know, we've seen these kind of media panics and these media hypes previously, right? It's just trying to keep a balanced kind of view of these things as professionals, as account managers, and when we're talking to our clients, you know, because everyone's going, oh my God, what's going on? The job's going and this and that. So let's keep in mind that balance is always a good thing. Just a couple of things on GPT in particular, because that's where a lot of the data is currently. You know, we saw this a little while ago where it got to 100 million users in a couple of months, and that hasn't happened before. Although very recently, interestingly, Threads, the new Meta Twitter competitor, did hit that pretty quickly and above that actually very quickly. So it has happened since then. But point being, again, mass adoption, exponential tech, everyone's talking about it. Your grandmother's probably mentioned it, your dog, your clients certainly have, and certainly interagency as well, right? So it's part of the conversation, part of the zeitgeist very quickly, which doesn't come across, happen very often, which is why we're in the other GPT land, which is general purpose technology. And that is steam, electricity, the internet. AI is part of that. So we have to lean into it as professionals to advise our clients and to understand how our businesses work better. So how smart is it? And again, it's just API, OpenAI we're talking about. And interestingly, for a business called OpenAI, they're very closed now because they started off as a non-profit, and obviously we're not now. But what we do know is, you know, in the most recent models, GPT-4, look at the progress over 3.5. You know, these models are massive. And these models are getting better, by the way. So in the background, lots of things are happening and going on, but in essence, they are smart. They're like your AI assistant. They're like your smart intern, your A-level student without the attitude. And I've got one of those, so I know what I'm speaking about. So it's pretty smart, but it isn't just about that. It isn't just about OpenAI. And if you weren't aware, OpenAI are heavily backed by Microsoft. So when we talk about OpenAI, do keep in mind that we are talking big tech. Interestingly, Microsoft have actually got a stake and have come out in favor of Facebook's Llama as well, interestingly. So they're making some very interesting moves. It matters to us as agencies and account managers, though, because our clients need to know about this. So which of these tools, which of these models are appropriate for us? Should we be using ChatGPT to put any of our private data into? The answer is obviously no. That's a bad idea. But some of these models are much more enterprise-based, Cohere, Anthropic, and there's loads of them coming out, and you're going to hear more and more about these over the next few months, particularly around the bottom two, around Meta and Google as well. So not just OpenAI. And when you're thinking about your clients as well, as mentioned, please don't put anything that is sensitive into them. But there are plenty of ways, and we work on a lot with our clients, of doing private LLMs, which are based around security and making sure that data doesn't go anywhere else and isn't actually available to the public just in-house. So what can it do? Well, I mean, what can't it do, right? Doesn't mean to say it should, but it can. So research, really interesting. So loads of analysis that we've done on our clients and our competitors and the market. Great for lead generation and tooling and putting those workflows together. Internally, we're doing it as a new agency. We're being lean and using the tools and eating our own dog food and doing that as well for lead gen. Great for nurturing, kind of early in that phase, but again, those ability for things like GPT to use and your own private models to use emails and plugins and use that workflow and that chaining process in a more effective way. Great for summarizing and so on, and can even help you with everyone's favorite timesheets. But I'm going to move on from that because everyone's going to switch off and go for lunch. So a few things it can do. Now, Jenny's got some brilliant examples, by the way, so I won't bang on about this too long. But if you haven't downloaded, or if your business hasn't downloaded or paid for ChatGPT Plus, which is only $20, so you really should, you won't have access at the moment to Interpreter, which is brilliant. So this is data visualization. So all these tools are coming out now, which negate the fact that tools like GPT are fixed transformers, which means they are trained on data before September 2021 in GPT's case. You're now able to use the web, use plugins, and use code interpreter, particularly do things like that. Two brilliant small examples. So put in just as a test, show me FTSE companies, give me the top 100, use that data into code interpreter and spat out these charts. So there's no use of Excel, no use of BI, nothing of that nature. Brilliant, right? And the clever thing here is the one that you get these wow moments of is when you see I didn't ask it for sector distribution. I just asked it to give me a line graph and a scatter graph of these things, and it did it by itself. And sometimes on these generative tools, you go, bloody hell, I didn't ask for that, but it's just being clever. And these are getting cleverer. On the right hand side, something we're actually working on, I can mention this briefly. So we're working on in healthcare in particular, and we're doing some comparative analysis around what a onboarding process looks like, for instance. So we put some data in, here's some examples, not the real data. And the output you're seeing at the bottom, again, through interpreter. So you can use these tools from text to interpret, if you want to call it that, or text to data visualization. And that is going to help your jobs as account managers immeasurably, in my view, and it's helping us for sure. So that is a use case you could definitely take away, which is, okay, if I've got a pitch coming up or a competitor, I'm looking at something, I want to bring my clients some new ideas, blimey, just go and use these. It's going to give you 10 brilliant ideas, visualize it for you, and speed up your work. So, and you're going to look really, really clever and probably get a promotion, but don't tell them I said that. Right. Prompting. You've probably all heard about it. What is it? Well, it's just basically, it's the UI of AI, is how we put it. And this is why it's so big, really, and why that little text box in the form factor of Google 25 years down the line is so popular, because it's so easy to use. And you don't have to be a computer programmer or a data scientist to use it. So prompting, really important. But when you're thinking about prompting, please don't do this. By all means, experiment. That's really important. And we've done plenty of it, obviously, over the last year or so. But there's rabbit holes, which you all love doing, and I'm into it. I know Jenny is too, getting into the AI rabbit hole. But it's great to experiment, but have a process behind it, because the outputs are directly related to the inputs, basically. So you can do these, but don't go to that guy with the moustache. He's a bit of a doofus, and he's making a huge mistake. I made a huge mistake by spending 3 hours looking at his TikToks. You can do it, but obviously it's not the only thing to do. What you can do instead is something we follow. We've got some downloads, by the way, and we'll share those. Is just use a process when you're doing these things. What are you trying to get out of it? Again, loads of ways of doing this and loads of information online. But some of the ways we use it in the learning process is using some of these principles. And just when you're using GPT or other tools, just think about it. What's the 80-20 rule? Why don't ask it that? Ask it to act like an expert. Try the higher order questions, metaphors, and then steel manning, doing the opposite of why won't this work? Why won't this SEO campaign I've thought about, or this piece of technology or analysis work? So do those processes. We've got some examples of those in our download. Happy to share that with you guys as well, which is kind of useful. And yeah, they're there. 3 things out of that one, really. There's a brilliant course that we have no affiliation with. It's just fantastic. We send a link to, and that is by OpenAI, but don't worry about that. It's a little bit heavy on the development side, but you don't need to do development or understand it to do it. So for account managers, perfect. And you know what? It'll just teach you probably in an hour. I think it's a 90-minute course, over 90 minutes. It'll tell you 50 times more than a million of those TikToks will, because you'll get to understand how the thing works, what inferences, what few shot and one shot learning are. It's fantastic. So can't say too much about how good that is. And we've got some little cheat sheets so we put together for different things and our process. So happy to share those, to share the love in terms of generative, because it's such a brilliant space. We'd like more people to be involved in it. Look, not to bang our drum, we're in the space and we're working on all of these things. This is brilliant. I won't talk about too much. We're working in e-coms. We're doing content and production, working in visitor attractions, campaigns, in finance, and across the board in loads of different really interesting generative ways with our clients. Summarization, social, and then further down the kind of more development route, using kind of very interestingly, using company data, as I mentioned earlier about private data, and using the fine tuning of GPT and other models to make those models work for our clients. So it's held within their business and they can use their data in a much cleverer way. And that is really making it machine readable, turning it into vectors and then outputting it in the most appropriate way. So loads of that stuff going on, fascinating stuff and great for us as agencies. And those are tools like experiment. These are all things that were done text to straight into GPT. There's business canvases we've made. I think we've done about 30 or so web apps, and then use some of those apps into our workflow, which again, you guys can do. Trackers, timesheets, expenses, all sorts of different ways of applying workflow and tooling into our job. And again, as a new business, we're using this quite significantly and talking about it on our podcast, which is how do these things work and how do they kind of come across? Are they production ready? And they're not always, but I think a lot of it is really useful stuff. So keep an eye on those. Right, just a couple of brand examples. There's tons of these out there, but a couple of interesting ones. And again, the first half of the year, we saw a lot of PR around this. And we're definitely, from our conversations and our account teams and so on with the clients we're talking to, it's much more around, okay, we understand it now. We know we need to do something, but what should that be? What's the use case? What's the guardrails? What's the safety? How does the IP work? Are we going to get sued? What's the reputational damage? All these questions are in play. And what you've seen in the first part of the year is brands jumping in and having guardrails over their work. So, simple things like Beck's, creating AI beer. I bet it tastes absolutely disgusting. I wouldn't touch it, not this year anyway. And doing a PR campaign and packaging all AI based. Nice little PR story. Did they really do it? Don't know. I'm sure we did. Coke, in the middle, great brand, straight in the middle of this, created a platform. I think they've got a partnership with Bain and some of the bigger agencies, and they've gone all in on this. Did a brilliant campaign in kind of March, April around using their assets and being generative, using influencers, and that's really cool. And they've done a whole bunch of other stuff, including some adverts as well. And large brands like Adidas are tying up customer personalization with generative, which is really interesting. And we're working in that space as well within the Web3 side, and the transparency. So that is not so much creative, but personalization within generative to affect your journey through their portal to sell you more products, to sell better, more personalized products. Fantastic case study. So lots of those interesting things. We're going to see more and more of those as we go through the next couple of quarters. Right. So forecast and productivity. So what's the business side of this saying? What's it all about? So a couple of top level things we've seen, and as you'd expect, the larger consultancies all over this, the Bains and the McKinseys and the Deloittes and the PwCs, all brilliant businesses, not as fast as us, obviously, but brilliant nonetheless. But from the top down, they've done a brilliant report, actually really good, and this has been widely shared, up to 4.4 trillion GDP in the next 10 years, equivalent to, 3.1 is the UK in 2021, it's probably a bit less this year. So there's big numbers in here and big plays coming into play. Their use cases, how they're seeing it, and I can concur with it. Software engineering, customer care or service, product R&D, sales and marketing. So we're seeing more in the sales and marketing and customer element, but definitely in software engineering in terms of productivity with co-piloting, very big. So they're the ones that they see. And interestingly, 60% or 70% of work time could be automated. Now, as agencies, we're all about efficiency, right? How much busy work do we do on a day-to-day basis? Probably quite a lot, right? So there's productivity gains here, huge ones actually for us and for our clients. So yeah, that's why this is I'm so bullish on this. Apologies for that image. That was a last-minute addition for some very bored-looking people on this Deloitte on these Deloitte stats. 52% have heard of Gen AI in the UK. With a 5,000 sample, I'm not sure if that's right. 8% are using it for work. Interesting. Okay, so that's like 4 million people. And this is the interesting one. Roughly 40% assume that it's correct or believe it's unbiased. Wow, it's not the case. It is the case depending on how you're fine-tuning your data, but actually, interestingly, how that will shape over the next few months of customer confidence and how that shapes our clients and their services with using generative. And that's conversations we are definitely having right now. So this is the snapshot today, by the way, might be different in 6 months. A couple of things that we've seen, not ours, but another study we saw, I think it was from DigiDay, of 100 agencies who was using it. That was back in, I think, May, so it may have changed. 70% of agencies, I'm not sure if 70 are actually using it or talking about it, but who knows? Brands up to 50, it's probably up a bit higher at the moment. And from the same study of roughly 100 agencies and brands, these are the kind of core areas, and that would correlate with what we see as well. So research and copy and content, definitely, because they're kind of easier to get to grips with. You can see it as an output. Marketing is part of that for sure. Video audio is a nascent area we're spending quite a bit of time in, actually, because text to video isn't quite there. We have some clients actually we're working on the moment on some clients in that space. It's not quite there production wise, but it's getting there very quickly. Audio as well, not to forget about that important point. The data management side on the bigger picture, a little bit harder, because that's typically into private data and how you're going to incorporate that as part of your transformation, as part of your workflow and so on. So that is typically a little bit harder to not get started, but to do. But it's getting there more and more. The conversations we're having, and I'm sure you guys will be having with your clients, if indeed in this space, are certainly moving down that route very quickly. Okay, a couple of other ones just on this. Great study came out in customer service. And the key things here were, for us as agencies, is interesting, is that the problem with large organizations, and sometimes small ones, is you know more than you tell. You can't get that information out to people. So in customer service, for instance, there's a great study where GPT and generative were used alongside customer service agents, and it rocketed up their productivity actually, and their resolving and the customer happiness as well. But the key thing for businesses and our clients particularly, and maybe some of the large agencies, is that in the middle, so the low performers were skilled up very, very quickly in this particular use case in 2 months instead of 6 months. And the high performers worked as they would anyway, because they're high performing. They share their knowledge. They just they integrate with new technology. They're not scared, and they are your high performers. It was the middle layer where the productivity gains and the challenges were. So as businesses advising our businesses, as accountant business people, that's potentially where some of the large numbers you've seen thrown around by Goldman Sachs, 200,000 people, BT, I think saying 10,000 people, those middle jobs are the ones that are going to be at risk. Because if your lower level, low performing staff, should say, are able to perform better, quicker using technology, you're going to have a shakeout. And I had a brilliant conversation with a very large organization last week about the dichotomy, the push and pull between the C-suite rubbing their hands is a bit strong, put together, saying this is brilliant productivity ROI. We're gonna rationalize this. Be brilliant. We're gonna make more profit. To the human cost of people saying, but that's jobs and that's people. I'm scared for my job. So there's a push and pull there, which can't be solved today, but it's a direction of travel. From the very bottom up, from our side up, rather than top down, this is what we're seeing. And we've got a couple of these, but one in particular, a significant 6-figure client with a 60% direct cost saving using generative, and that is an absolute rock solid fact because we've just done it. So and we're doing more of these, so it really is, that is an absolute fact. So this stuff does work. Internally, 20 to 30%, I think, with development in terms of co-piloting and other tools for our development stuff, and it ranges. It depends what we're talking about. 15 to 75% productivity. I did something very small yesterday, which was 100% productivity. I didn't have to do it, and I did it in Interpreter. 15% on some of the tools, and again, being lean as a business and an agency, we're using a few of these tools to chain our workflow together, and it's certainly 15 and upwards from there. So all to play for, basically. Lean into it because this stuff really does work. Right, a couple of things quickly on the legal landscape. We could do a whole day on this really, but where it sits at the moment is obviously regulation is behind because this has moved so quickly, and we don't see this very often, which is this amount of technology and this amount of speed. So we've condensed maybe 5 years of innovation into 6 months. So no wonder it is, but everyone's getting their act together very quickly. There's a political, social, behavioral, technological reason for that. We're in general purpose technology land here, which could mean huge amounts of gains for sovereign AI, for the UK, for EU and America, China, etc. Different acts across different things. EU Act is happening, probably more on the GDPR kind of level. Labeling and safety levels and laws will come into play. The UK's taken, unusually, not being political, a very good view, I think, of pro-innovation and decentralizing, at least for now, what the regulations will be in terms of that pro-innovation approach for generative and AI. China, interestingly, are in the, I think, aptly named Cyberspace Administration Committee, I think it is coming on the 15th, which will be the first one globally, I believe, which no doubt will have some correlation with how the country is run. But that'd be interesting. Of course, US, big area, very pro-innovation, but lots of interesting things happening there around copyright and IP in the Senate, and the FTC as well with OpenAI, just kind of not subpoenaed them, but are talking about, well, what does it mean? So they're taking it seriously, which is brilliant. And then there's lots of things happening around, is AI creative? The Grammys came out a couple of weeks ago saying, we can accept AI creativity for next year, but it has to have a human component. I think we're going to see more and more of these things. And then Getty, obviously, as a creative business, are also doing a lot of work around suing people because some of their data might have been trained. But Adobe, interestingly, have taken a different view. So last couple on this, IP and copyright, just on the creative side. And again, I know it's not all creative agencies, but just to understand where this is going for the tools that we use every day, Adobe and Shutterstock have both indemnifying enterprise customers if they use generative tools and their generative imagery to create. They will pay your legal costs, which when I heard it, I lifted off my chair. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I can't say that's definitely how it's going to shake out, but this is the direction of travel. So you've got all the incumbents over here, and it's good for us to know as businesses, but the incumbents are over here saying, wow, this stuff's moving quickly. We can't miss this boat. So So what's happening is the trusted ones, the Shutterstocks, the Adobes, the Microsofts, the Azures, the AWSs, Alarms, etc., are doing exactly that, which is trust us. You trusted us already. You need to trust us now. So that's where this is going very quickly. So that's fascinating, and that is really a space to watch. Last couple then, very quickly. AI doesn't always go right. It sometimes goes wrong. There are ways to game the system. It's getting better. This is one of my favorites on the left, which is asking AI about downloading pirated websites. It says absolutely not. I can't give you that. Ask AI, well, which one should I avoid so I never go near them? And it shows you. It's kind of funny. Not that I'm an advocate of pirating films, obviously. Oh, that's tightened up recently, actually, so I'm not sure it's quite as easy. Hands are just hard to do in AI from the creative side. Kind of funny, because there's so many joints. It's the hardest thing. And you know what? In the Renaissance, they couldn't get hands right either. And if you look at cave dwelling drawings, also similar. And don't do this one, whatever you do, the Avianca example, which is a lawyer in Latin America who used ChatGPT to make up some case law, got found out, and I think he's in jail currently. So please don't do that, account managers and agency execs. It's a terrible idea. Right, last bit then. If you want a bit of a laugh / some truth, and the definitive generative AI guide for account managers, specifically for you brilliant people who have come on this call for no one else, go to generate.com account book. As a brand new, hot off the presses AI guide just for you, which will give you a giggle over your lunch break. So go and download that because it's fun. And it's only 50% generative because I'm a brilliant copywriter, obviously. So mainly it's me. Right, that's it from me. 3 things really. Look, it's a brilliant space. We're in general purpose technology land. You have to lean into it. Even if you don't believe it, you don't believe the trust is there, you have to understand it because your clients are going to be asking about it. And you need to be productive and you need to have even an answer. The answer is no because of X. That's a perfectly good answer. But you need to have an answer and have an understanding of it. So be AI enabled. Doesn't mean AI is everything. Educate yourself. Got loads of resources out there. It's not difficult. And don't forget, very importantly, that we're early. Right, this is really early in. You're not too late. You can get involved, get yourselves involved for your own careers and so on, for your agencies and definitely for your clients. So happy to chat, ask questions. Looking forward to Jenny's brilliant piece on all the great tools for you guys as account managers. And give me a shout at roy@generate.com.
Roy, thank you so much. That was so informative and so thorough. So thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. And just while I'm doing that, just to let you know that I've actually invited Sharon Torek, who's a US lawyer specializing for agencies and is talking at the upcoming AI for Marketers Summit meeting. So I'm really lucky to have her as a guest on the podcast. So look out for that if you're interested in the legal side, particularly. So look, I'm going to share some tools that you could be using if you're not already. That I've divided them into 4 categories. And as Roy said, they're mostly about speed and productivity, because I wanted you to come away with some specific tools that you could use in your job right now. So the category 1 is service delivery. So you have to be good at getting stuff done in the agency and organizing yourself. So AI can help us organize our workload and also speed up our self-development. So let me show you a couple of tools. If you're not already using it, Todoist with an AI assistant is fantastic. You can prioritize your tasks as you enter them. And if you follow the Eisenhower matrix method, which is the labels down on the bottom right-hand corner, you can actually label the tasks as you put them into your Todoist list. It automatically breaks those tasks down into steps. You can use the tool to time block, and it also integrates with your calendar system and is available on desktop or mobile. So if you're the kind of person, maybe you're just starting out in an agency, you have to organize yourself, this is a great tool to use. The second one is Glasp. Glasp, again, you might be familiar with already, but I think this is really going to help self-development. So you've probably currently got lots of different resources that you use to learn about your job. So let's suppose you're an account manager in performance marketing. You may be reading The Drum. You may be looking at podcasts, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos to accelerate your learning. You probably are using learndigital.com with Google. And I've put the link there. I've just read it out, but it's called Learn with Google. But they do free digital strategy courses. What this tool will allow you to do is basically consolidate all of your learnings into one place in one comprehensive dashboard. So I've just got a screenshot there of what it looks like when you hit the drum. If you pick an article that's resonating with you, that you're learning from, you can highlight the areas that you're learning from, capture it in Glasp, and that will mean that all your learnings are in one place. Here's an example of how you use it on YouTube. So any YouTube video, you imagine you don't have to sit through hours of a YouTube video. Here's me interviewing Roy on our latest podcast episode. If you have Glasp, which is just a Chrome extension, this comes up, you click Glasp, and then it summarizes the whole YouTube video just into one succinct paragraph in ChatGPT. So use that. And I think that's really going to save you lots and lots of time reading reams and reams of stuff on the internet. The second category is about client experience. And I think particularly AI can help us enhance our client relationships. So let me share a few tools. The first one I've been banging on about called Crystal Knows, and this is an AI-driven app that plugs into LinkedIn. So let's suppose you're looking at your client's profile on LinkedIn. They happen to be quite active. This will tell you what kind of communication style they have. It would also help you with the do's and don'ts of how to build rapport with that person. So you could be researching your existing clients, but also if you're pitching for new business, you could be looking at your prospects on LinkedIn. And this will just help you build that rapport and communicate with them in the most appropriate way that suits them. The next one is Poised. Again, I had the founder of Poised on my podcast episode, but this is like having your own private communication skills coach. So it plugs into any virtual meeting platform. It will tell you if you're talking too fast, like I am now, if you're using hedging words like sort of, kind of, etc. It will just help you sharpen up your communication skills. It will tell you if your energy's low, if you're not asking enough questions, if you are not pausing enough. So you can either have this live box on the screen telling you real time, but you can close that off and also have a report afterwards. So you can track your progress over time. Fantastic tool. I highly recommend it. The next one is WordTune Spices. And I want to give a shout out to Conrad Sanders, who came up with this tool on my recent chat with him on the podcast. This is also like you'll have a private writing skills coach that's going to get you better at writing emails, proposals, pitch decks. You know, how many times I know we're using Gmail, for example, and it auto-corrects, but this tool will help you add things like statistical facts or analogies or expanding on a point that you've made. So it's a really comprehensive tool. It's worth exploring to make you better at writing. Fireflies.ai. Now, again, you may be using a transcription tool with your virtual meetings with clients. But the reason I'm sharing it, I used to use otter.ai, but I'm now using Fireflies, specifically because it integrates with so many different project management tools, but also it gives you a really succinct summary and action points. So again, saves you tons of time. You don't have to try and remember what you talked about in the meeting and start writing a big contact report. It's going to make you look efficient when you send a really succinct summary with the actions directly after the meeting. So check that one out if you haven't already. Obviously ask for permission from your client to record the call, but it also gives you voice of the customer. So if you imagine that you're capturing all of this data from your client conversations, you can then pass that information onto your marketing department so that they can integrate that voice of the customer into your agency's marketing efforts. Third category, consultancy. So this level is probably for more experienced account managers who are expected to understand the client's business, to come up with relevant ideas, and to really immerse yourself. So this tool can help you speed up with client research. Because if you're handed a new business, you know, we've just won this account, yay, now it's down to you. You want to get up to speed quickly on what's going on in that client's business. And in the past, you had to rake through lots of newspaper articles and industry press and looking at the websites. Use this tool immediately. Roy mentioned it. It's ChatGPT 4 Code Interpreter. It's the £20 a month. You go into settings, you go into, it's in beta mode at the moment. As Roy said, it's just come out. but you can basically upload any piece of data. So I'm going to show you an example. If you were to download, for example, the chairman's statement or the company's annual report or the transcript from the investor relations meeting, it will summarize it for you. So you can give it a prompt. I've just given you an example. I mean, I'm not great at prompts, but I just said, like, take the following data and create a visual graph. That's it. So this is what it gave me. So let's suppose you've just won the Diageo account and you're on the Smirnoff brand. You're like, where do I start? So you go to the chairman's statement and you think, well, that's lots of copy and lots of text. You go to ChatGPT code interpreter and you just say, give me a summary of this and make it visual, because I haven't got time to rake through all of this. Look what it gave me. Honestly, I just couldn't believe it. You know, I started off in the dinosaur years of account management where everything took a million years. Here it is in one. So you imagine you're just about to go to a client meeting. You've only got 2 days because everything happens at the speed of knots in an agency. You've got no time. This tool can help you with your learnings. Last category, number 4, before we go to your questions. This is a way of finding out and identifying some future growth opportunities in the account. So again, if you are a senior account manager, account director, client services director, it's our job to look at the forecast and to come up with relevant ideas to present to our client. So what can you use for that? Again, step 1, use whatever data you can download. So again, if your client in the UK is a limited company, you can download their report and accounts from Companies House. Similarly, if it's a PLC, you can go to some tool like a website, called Seeking Alpha, and you can download the transcript from the quarterly investor relations meeting. Again, it's reams of data which you want to quickly summarize and get the gist of. Step 2 is to ask it to identify ideas. So I've put a couple of tools in here. Booklet is one, and the other one is ChatGPT Prompt Splitter, because what I've found through testing this is the bigger the PDF that you upload, sometimes it struggles with a huge size. So what you can do with these 2 tools is actually select the piece of the data that you're interested in summarizing and analyzing it, then give it to ChatGPT and ask it to visualize. So again, the prompt, nothing fancy. Tell it who they are. You are an account manager in a digital marketing agency. Please identify the opportunities that I can provide in terms of services based on this data that I've just downloaded from the client. That's it. So here's an example, Dobby's garden centers. So I went to Companies House, I downloaded the document, it was 49 pages. There's from page 7 to page 9, it says future developments. And just from that information, from a few pages, I said, come up with some ideas that I could present that was relevant to where they're going as a business. And I was blown away. I've been so excited to share this. It's just phenomenal. It came up with 9 opportunities. These are 9 digital marketing ideas that I could go back to the client with, or it could be just stimulating my thoughts on the kinds of ideas that we could present to the client. And behind these 9 opportunities, it wasn't just one line that gives you context. So I just had to pull out one because there was just too much information. But look at this. One of those categories, they said, was local marketing for new and redeveloped centres. So turns out Dobby's is a garden centre. If you're not familiar with Dobby's, they're saying, like, you can, as the agency, you can help in the promotion of the grand openings and the redevelopments through local SEO, event marketing, and community engagement. I mean, how cool is that? Even if this is just a start of the 10, it's certainly going to put you ahead of the game, and it's going to start stimulating some thoughts for where this could take you. And then finally, using the same tool, Code Interpreter on ChatGPT 4. Let's suppose, again, you're senior, you give them an Excel spreadsheet. So I made this up. It's got 4 tabs. And I said, okay, here's all the client list. Here's what we built for the last 3 years, and here's our 2023 forecast. visualize it for me just with that data, and also tell me from 2022, if I've got a 10% growth target, tell me what that growth target would be based on the current forecast as of July. And again, I just was basically so bloody excited about this. So yeah, they're the steps, and this is what it gave me. I mean, I could probably even go back and say, make it look a bit prettier, but you can see that it's laid it all out. And it's given me, like, your 10% growth target from 2022 would be 1.92 million. So I'm just thinking about, for the account manager, if you want to look at the client spend for the last 3 years, ask your finance director for any spreadsheets they can give you. Put it in private mode on your ChatGPT 4 tool, upload the data and ask it to analyze it for you, because you're going to get client patterns of spend. You can even break it down by types of services. And this is like having your kind of own data analyst by your side during your working day. So that's where I'm going to stop. We haven't done badly on time, actually, Roy. It's 12:40. I really hope that's been useful. But what we'd love to do is I'm going to stop sharing and ask for questions. So, Alison, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to, or has anyone asked any questions?
So Roy's very kindly answered a question in the background whilst you've been chatting. And actually, we've just had our first new question pop up. So Joe has asked, when dealing with financial data, it's really important, if we're using AI tools to help with this, it has to be super accurate. I would hate to quote any incorrect figures when talking to a client.
Oh my God, I agree with you, Joan. Is that Joan Palmer? That would be interesting.
Joe Green.
No, sorry, Joe Green. Hi, Joe. Roy, you probably want to answer that, but I've got my view, because yes, you have to double check. But Roy, you've probably got a much more comprehensive answer.
Exactly right. You've got to see some of these systems as, like I said earlier, the intern. You wouldn't let them run crazy with your client. So in some cases, it's better to use that privately, I said private mode, or preferably in your own private LLM or fine-tune LLM, and double check it. Now, of course, you may say, "Oh, is that actually helping?" But it is, because the predictive and the generative side of it is giving you potentially other routes to travel in relation to what you do with that data. So you have to check. It's only sensible checks and balances, particularly when it comes to core business activities. That, and not everything's there yet, by the way. But again, because it's so new, and because the direction of travel is, and there is actually some stuff happening anyway around more private data and financial data, those use cases and those smaller, specifically fine-tuned models are actually already coming out anyway. So in the next few months, you're going to see more and more of those, which are tuned directly into finance or operations or healthcare and so on. And of course, there's obviously lots of the large businesses, the Salesforces and so on, are incorporating those tools into their process anyway. So you're probably going to find that some of those things you don't have to go and roll your own. That's not right for everyone either. So some of these larger organizations and the tools you're probably already using, if they're not already doing it, they will be pretty soon. So keep an eye on it.
Can I just add to that, Roy? Because I agree. It's a great point that you've just made, is that look towards your existing tech stack first. Like, what are you using currently with your agency? Because AI is probably, if not already, having AI capabilities built in. Anything in the public domain, obviously you can analyze quite freely, Joe. It's just the stuff that it's going to come up with from scratch that you need to double check, I suppose. And Roy, a question for you. When you said either put it into private mode or use your own LLM, do you know of any agency currently that is using their own LLM? Maybe the big networks are, because I know that what you referred to before, but any other agencies on an independent basis are using their own LLM?
We're working on ours, obviously.
You are, yeah.
Yeah. So I can't speak for other agencies. The conversations we're having, and again with partners, and obviously we work with agencies too, by the way, just a point to make, as clients as well, and have helped out some agencies. So yeah, the conversations are in that space, but I think it's quite early still. Some people are bullish on it and say, right, we're going to use this, and some people are not. I think, like I say, it's fair to say the larger networks and holding companies are all over it, the WPPs of the world and so on. because they've already done that basically. And I think even Publicis did launch an early version of this. I think it was it called Claude? Oh, no, it was an early version a couple of years ago. And what's interesting, what kind of laughed at, which they made a big thing of in Cannes actually over the last the Lion Festival, saying we told you we were correct 3-4 years ago, and you all laughed at our hugely multi-million-dollar AI platform. So the large ones definitely, but I think if companies aren't, and there's maybe a SaaS opportunity, but if companies aren't doing it, it's going to happen pretty soon. So
could you help, like Roy, you work with agencies as well as kind of marketing clients, tech clients. Can you help navigate that space? Like if there's any agency listening that thinks that's a really interesting thing that I'd like to explore, is that something that you help them with?
Yeah, we're doing that right now, actually, on some really interesting use cases around that. I mentioned earlier about the fine tuning. So that is exactly that. So the couple of use cases that we're looking at, there is a new starter onboarding. We're looking at that. There is, interestingly, financial data in relation to internal company data that we're looking at as well. So we are doing that. So yeah, happy to have a chat. It's fast moving. The tools that we're using now are also being updated, and new incumbents into the market on a daily basis. I mean, it's interesting. We started in December actually, putting together a updated tool set of different types of tools. Of course, we keep on top of it, but we stopped at, when it hit over 1,000, we stopped and said, we need to take a different view here, because it is actually very difficult as a fast moving and growing business as well to keep on top of all the tools. The right approach, of course, is what's your use, as with anything. And again, not to forget that, you know, technology is a catalyst. It's not everything. Even AI still needs human input, and before it's sentient, and it isn't currently, but super intelligence within a decade, says Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI. Who knows? AGI is on the way, you know, baby AGI and agents and auto GPT, all these other things you may have heard of or not are coming potentially, not production ready yet. So it's all about use case, isn't it? These are technology tools as a catalyst, right? We just have to remember that as well.
Yeah, start with the task that you're doing, analyze the task, break it down into steps, and think, can I get any tool to help me with that? So I agree, Roy. Alison, have we got any more questions?
Yes, actually, quite a lot have now come in. So actually, one of them that's linked to what you've just said is, do either of you have a specific model that you would recommend to use AI on mundane tasks like clip reports? Because an anonymous attendee has asked or mentioned that they spend a lot of billable time on this and they want to put pressure on their vendors to help them. So any model that would be better in AI to use on clip reports?
What was the report? Sorry,
clip reports.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, obviously the quite recently, and again, we're into API land here as well, because, you know, you don't want to be putting anything that's private out in the wild. But Anthropic, so Claude 2, which was launched, I think, a couple of weeks ago, which has a much larger context window, is interesting. So GPT, I think, is 8 to 10,000, if I'm wrong. I might be wrong, but Claude has 100,000. So the ability for it to remember larger type reports is really interesting. It's Claude, CLAUDE.ai. So that's Anthropic, one of the bigger kind of more independent plays, although are in bed with some large tech as well. Would be worth a look, because certainly in API level, then you can use it privately, use it within your Azure, whatever system you're using, use your private data. If it's publicly available, fine, but it's a useful tool. It does hallucinate still a little bit towards the end, and that's what happens when the context window runs out and the memory runs out. But I would probably recommend that if you're going to try and compare something. It might be useful.
Great, thank you. Couple of questions that sort of merge into each other. One is from Pippa Maguire about how to give confidence to clients that if you're using AI in your agency to help with work on their projects, especially if the clients' companies haven't actually given them guidance yet or blanketly told them either to use it or how to use it. Yep. And also, alongside that, how do you make sure that you're using AI to create something personalized and bespoke? Is there a danger that the same sort of information will be generated by different people in different agencies?
Sure. First part, hire us to do an AI audit. We're doing loads of them, being slightly glib, but that is what we're doing. which is exactly, it's a great question though, to be honest, because what we're finding, and this is literally changed in the last probably 2 months. In all seriousness, the conversations up until around March or April were, what's this? And yeah, we use it. We do it. Literally in May onwards, it's been okay. How are we going to use this? So we need to take a step back a little bit. What's the reputational risk? What's the security risk? What's the risk to our internal staff? And what's the ROI? And that is the generative AI strategy sprints that we are doing with clients in exactly that format. Because you're absolutely right. It's okay to test something, and you're and even if you haven't, most businesses don't have a generative policy. Should your staff be allowed on company premises, so therefore as part of your IT, to use ChatGPT? Some businesses, we know some businesses that haven't. They say no, we're just going to not do that because we don't want people going, oh, I can't be bothered writing this brief for said client. So therefore, no one's going to know if I put it in, I put it on private mode. We don't really know where that sits, really, to be brutally frank. If you're doing that, there's a risk to that. But again, people are fundamentally, I wouldn't say lazy, but this is me, by the way. Right, if it's a tool I can use and it's appropriate, I'm going to use it. So I think AI strategy becomes table stakes, to be honest. That's the key answer, because testing and POCing is great too. And we have done that as well, by the way. You don't have to go and do that as long as you've got a particular use case. So let's keep the social part of it, or let's look at our content production, or let's look at our summarization, or even our workflow. We've done all those things, but it really depends on the use case. So definitely have a strategy. What was the second part of the question? Sorry.
It was from Lisa Chan. As more and more people start using AI, how do we ensure we get a personalized and bespoke service or output?
Yeah. So the interesting thing, of course, because it's generative or predictive, you don't get the same result each time, which is also as a boon and a slight challenge, right? Because if you need to get, and this is again the conversations we're having continuously are, but if the output is changing, how do I know which output is correct? Great question. Certainly within the visual media part of generative. So what I mean by that is the images, the text to video, and the tools being Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, Dolly, and those kind of groupings of and Firefly, Adobe as well. They've all got different ways of doing weights. They've all got different prompts, and if you're kind of experienced enough in understanding how that engineering part works visually, you can seed images. You can use them. I've done it with some quite big brands actually. Which is you need to have, in that simple to understand way, you need to have the brand essence correct, right? You need your tones and everything else. It needs to be kind of in a certain way, but we've done it with a couple. And there are ways around that, definitely. And other things, again, it's context, isn't it? What are we trying to do here? If it's finance, it just needs to be correct. It can't hallucinate. Therefore, smaller private large language models, fine-tuned to your own purposes, are the way to go 100%. So yeah, so I guess it's an open question though, isn't it? That the ability for generative is also some of its challenges, which is okay, but no, I don't want it to do more creative things. I just want 10 of these things. So that at the moment is needs a bit of wrestling, a bit of wrangling, to be honest. But you can do it, just need to be experienced in it.
Can I add a couple of points to what you just said, Roy? I would reiterate the point that you've said about having a policy. I've been following a lot of what procurement are talking about currently, and they're being briefed to ask their agency, what's your AI policy? So I've picked out a couple of articles that were saying the same thing. So yeah, there is a bit of a demand for that recently. And I was speaking to an account manager 2 days ago who'd been asked by her client to provide a prompt that would enable them to replicate the work that they had done. And it was a series of headlines. So that is, it really is important for us as agencies to have a policy. The second point I just wanted to mention was a tool that is called writer.com, where you can upload your brand guidelines and have that tool come up with copy that is in line with your brand tone of voice. So I just wanted to add a couple of things there.
And there are actually a couple of questions that lead into that about the clients potentially taking work away from the agency. One of them is, what do you think about AI being used to transition into selling value instead of selling time? And they've asked you, Roy, do you still charge for work based on hours? And then also this danger for agencies that in the mid to long term, that brands, marketing teams begin to bring more and more work in-house. Obviously, it's about future-proofing, but how would you respond to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, we don't. Is the short answer. Sell on time, sell on value. Because in a world where anything's possible, and generative is part of that, and certainly as agencies and more creative agencies and SEO and performance ones too, it can help across the board. So I think that the answer really is, well, first of all, no, we don't. We do it on value, but it's quick, it's fast moving, isn't it? You know, because the landscape is moving so quickly that, you know, our clients will ask us questions and we're like, okay, we'd have to figure that out actually with you, because we don't actually have an answer to some of those questions. I think the value part of agencies, and again, let me put it this way: if I'm a client and I've got an agency, and if my agency isn't coming to me, and I can use GPT and Midjourney and all these other tools, and I'm reasonably intelligent, and I can, okay, I've got some good stuff. If you're not doing that at a base level and understanding what the landscape looks like, you've got bigger problems than you think, because the clients it's going to have a downward pressure on time-based agencies anyway, because if you're not adding that value piece and that strategic piece and so forth, it's a commodity game to the bottom. Because if you can create 100 pieces of content using the various tools and chaining in 15, 20, 30% of the time you did, well, the client is correct to say, these tools can do this now. Why aren't I getting the additional value and support? Or indeed, should I bring this in-house? Now, that's easy to say and hard to do, because you do need, you know, it sounds easy, but it isn't, because you do need to understand all the landscape, the tools, the chaining, and particularly when you start doing production work, the underlying weights and inferences and how the models actually work and so on, as well as the IP and the copyright. But it's not, you know, it's not rocket science, or it's not magic and mystery. So I think agencies that don't lead into it are going to have a big shock. I really do, because that middle management piece I mentioned, and that goes for account managers, creatives, performance, etc. That middle piece is quite quickly going to be production level ready. It is in some cases, and it's not going to stop. So if I were an agency not using this stuff, I would either A, partner with someone who does, or B, very quickly get myself an AI policy together and get my teams leaning into it and not be fearful of it, because it's not going away. The cat's out of the box. It really is. So I think there's loads of opportunities, by the way. I wouldn't have started a new agency in the middle of this fantastic situation where we are if I didn't feel I was bullish on it and that there was massive opportunities. There are. So it horse for courses, right? It depends how you look at it. I'm an optimist, a rational optimist. So I think this technology is a brilliant catalyst for growth. But you have to have a plan of action, you have to understand it, and you have to be heads into it, because you're not going to outperform someone who isn't. And that could be your client or your client team. So you're going to have to show value anyway.
Roy, we've just got a couple of minutes left. I just want to reiterate that we will be providing the recording. Alison, any final questions in the last 2 minutes? I want to be respectful of Roy's time.
Yes, so a couple of questions that lead into each other on reporting. So specifically, any suggestions for AI tools to do SEO reporting for clients, and also for reporting in general to clients from within the agency in order to reduce billable time? Do you have any suggestions for the best AI tools for reporting to clients?
We've got a table of 1,000 tools. I'm happy to share it with you. I don't have one offhand. Reason being, as described, I'm sure there are brilliant tools out there that other people might know, that SEO isn't our key area. So I haven't spent much time in that space. What I will say though is, tools are great, but you really should be thinking a little bit about your own. So that it might be something that, you know, again, not teaching agencies what to do and how to productize their services, but if you're not either white labeling something that exists, or potentially thinking about the web apps you might create or the process you might create for your clients, which is IPable and ownable, I mean, that's the route I would take personally. But you know, I don't know, maybe Jenny knows. I haven't got any to hand, but I'm happy to share the link to the tools.
I'm sorry, I haven't, Roy. Okay, I'm going to cut it off there. I think
I've just got one very quick last question, which I think is quite important. Is, can Google detect AI written content? And if so, does it affect rankings?
Great question. Great question. Yes and no, I think is the fair answer. There are a load of detection tools out there which can help you to negate this. And we were doing a lot of this work a few months ago. That's AI driven, run it through various of the tools. Where's the percentage AI versus, and it's all potential and possible. So you've got to remember this as well, like Google. Google's business model is potentially, their search model is potentially threatened by OpenAI. Now they've come out all guns blazing after that blip in February, where they lost a couple of billion pounds off their market cap when their AI demo went wrong. So their search generative experience is all going to come back into play. So they've got two things. They may penalize, I don't know, they may penalize words which aren't created with their tools. Don't know. But the search paradigm and the search generative experience which is going to change, which is the 10 blue links are probably going to go away, because if you've got context and you've got the ability to see where information is coming from, and you can find it on page one, we've got a different paradigm. So for SEO agencies, I'm sure they know that. Yes and no. There was a bit of hoo-ha about it, and I'm sure that in the next Google update there'll be another piece. But Google changes their mind regularly anyway, and as an SEO agency, it's always difficult to get up with the EATs and whatever's coming next. So my view would be, to be brutally frank on it, would be sorry for that. I wasn't against the person who asked the question, but any content that you put out shouldn't be rubbish or shouldn't be generated without any kind of oversight anyway. I'm sure they weren't doing that. That wasn't the spirit of the question. But ultimately, if the content's good enough, you're likely to be okay with Google. Is it valuable? Following the Google kind of rules, that's a sensible approach, definitely. But that will probably change. So watch this space.
Great. Thank you so much, Roy, for everything that you've shared. Obviously, when we send the follow-up, we'll share your contact details if you want to talk to Roy about working together. Also, the link to the book that Roy shared, which was very generous. Thank you very much. And the recording. Alison, is there anything that I've missed?
No, I don't think so. I think Roy did mention his website where he'd had a suggestion of AI tools, which I believe we've shared before actually on your newsletter. So we may be able to, we'll be able to add that in as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Perfect.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Roy, thank you so much for your time. Alison, thank you so much for facilitating everything. And yeah, enjoy playing around with AI.
Good stuff. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for bearing with.
Bye.